Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Just Tilno, a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. If you're planning to sponsor your spouse for permanent residency in Canada, one of the first questions you'll probably ask is, should we apply inland or outland spousal sponsorship? And honestly, choosing the right option can make a big difference in how smooth and fast your sponsorship process goes. In today's video, I'll break down and explain about the meaning of inland and outland sponsorship, how these differ in terms of processing times and travel flexibility, and pros and cons of choosing these options. I would also use some real life examples from clients that I have helped to make you understand in a better way. Let's start by understanding what inland and outland sponsorship really means. Inland spousal sponsorship is a process in which Canadian citizen or permanent resident can sponsor their spouse who is living in Canada, meaning your spouse or partner is already living here with you on a temporary resident status, such as study permit, work permit, or even a visitor visa when you submit the sponsorship application. Outland sponsorship, on the other hand, is a process where your spouse or partner is living outside Canada when you submit the sponsorship application. These categories, that is, inland and outland, are mainly based on where the person being sponsored, that is, the principal applicant, is living. But here's something many people don't realize. Even if both of you are living together in Canada, you are still eligible to apply under the Outland category. A little later in this video, I'll explain why some couples who are already living together in Canada are choosing the Outland route. Now, let's talk about the processing times for inland and outland applications. That's one of the first things every couple asks. As of today, when I'm making this video, average processing time for inland spousal sponsorship is around 20 months, while outland sponsorship takes roughly 14 months on an average. These processing times get updated every month by IRCC, and you can check them by using this IRCC tool. Please note that these processing times are just averages. Processing time of your application can still vary depending on various factors like the visa officer where the application is being processed, your background checks, completeness of your file, and complexity of your case. I always emphasize the organization of the application. For my clients, I always make sure to submit a well-organized application where information and relationship timelines are easy to follow. Because, of course, it does make a difference. Another factor that affects the processing times is the IRCC office where the applications get processed. Generally, inland applications are processed entirely within Canada, whereas outland applications, on the other hand, often go through a visa office abroad. So depending on the workload of the office where the application is being processed, it affects how fast or slow the file moves. Next, if we talk about a scenario where you get an interview. Spousal sponsorship interviews are not a normal part of the process, but in case IRCC is doubtful about your identity or genuineness of relationship, they may call you in for an interview. If you get called in for interview, then the interview will happen in Canada for inland application, but in the applicant's country of residence in case of outland application. Again, what matters most is how strong and well organized your file is. If your relationship story is clear, consistent, and well documented, whether it's inland or outland, you'll build the officer's trust right away and hopefully won't even have to worry about getting an interview. Now, let's talk about who can apply for an open work permit after submitting a spousal sponsorship application. This part often confuses many people. For a long time, inland applicants had one major advantage. They could apply for an open work permit after submitting and receiving AOR for their spousal sponsorship file and start working while waiting for a decision on their PR application. But here's the interesting part that many people don't know about. A public policy was introduced by Minister Sean Fraser in 2023, which made it possible for certain Outland applicants who are physically present in Canada to qualify for an open work permit. That means even if your application is filed under the Outland category, as long as you are in Canada with a valid temporary status, you may still be eligible to apply for open work permit and work while your PR application is in process. Let me give you an example here. I had a client who was in Canada on a visitor visa. They decided to file Outland Spousal sponsorship to take advantage of the faster processing time and the appeal rights. Due to public policy, we were also able to apply for an open work permit after getting AOR. Within about 2 months, the applicant received work authorization and continued living and working in Canada while the PR application was being processed. So, like my client, this change gave many couples the best of both the worlds. The flexibility to travel and appeal rights of Outland, plus the ability of work while waiting. Here's the exception where the applicant can even be eligible to apply for open work permit without AOR. That is, if your temporary status in Canada is expiring within 2 weeks or less, and you have already applied under in Canada class or the family class. We can say that the inland sponsorship still works well for couples who plan to stay in Canada and don't need travel flexibility, whereas Outland sponsorship has now become a strong option for many families, especially after this policy which grants open work permit to eligible applicants. If we talk about the travel flexibility, then this is one of the biggest deciding factors these days. If the applicant needs to travel frequently for work, family reasons, or simply want the freedom to move in and out of Canada, then Outland sponsorship might be a better choice. Because if you apply under Inland, you're expected to stay in Canada until a decision is made on your PR application. You cannot have extended periods of stay outside Canada or many frequent travels outside Canada during the processing. So, it is generally recommended to have a short trip if you really had to leave for some reason. If the applicant leave for extended periods, the inland application could be considered abandoned and you might have to apply again. So, if travel is important or there's any uncertainty about your ability to stay in Canada continuously during the processing, the Outland sponsorship option is a safer one for you. These obligations are for the person who is being sponsored, that is the principal applicant. However, as a sponsor, you also have some obligations regarding living inside Canada or outside. If the sponsor is a permanent resident, they should be residing in Canada at the time of application submission and during processing. You should not travel outside Canada for extended periods of time. If the sponsor is a Canadian citizen, then they have the privilege of applying to sponsor their spouse while they themselves are living outside Canada. But they must show an intent to move to Canada once their spouse gets PR. Next, talking about the most unfortunate situation in case your application gets refused. I hope you submit a strong application so you don't have to worry about it, but let's be realistic. Refusals do happen. Inland sponsorship don't come with the right to appeal, but you do have the option to submit a judicial review, which is of course a lengthy and costly process. Any new evidence is also not considered during the judicial review process. However, Outland sponsorship applications come with the right to appeal before Immigration Appeal Division. Unlike judicial review, Immigration Appeal Division considers cases as de novo. This means the appellant can introduce evidence that was not before the immigration officer who refused the case, and a new assessment of the sponsorship application can be made. So, the question comes, considering all the factors which I have mentioned before, which one should you choose, inland or outland? Now, this really depends on your situation and the kind of flexibility that you want. If both of you are already in Canada, you are in a fortunate position. You can choose to apply either inland or outland sponsorship. I have already mentioned the differences earlier, so now it really comes down to what fits your lifestyle better. Staying under one process here in Canada or choosing the outland route for a bit more flexibility with regards to travel and appeal rights. And also possibly saving some time based on the current processing time differences between both types of applications. By now, you know your options. So, whichever option you choose, the important thing is it should reflect your reality, not just what someone else did. Most importantly, submit a well organized application that clearly tells your story and speaks for your relationship. If your spouse is outside Canada, then Outland is the only route available for you. And I understand it can feel difficult, especially when all you want is to be together as soon as possible. Here's where the dual intent visitor visa comes in. Once you have submitted your sponsorship application and received your AOR, your spouse can apply for a dual intent visitor visa to come to Canada temporarily while the PR application is processing. Dual intent simply means the officer recognizes that your spouse has both a temporary reason to visit and a long term goal to immigrate, and that's completely allowed under Canadian law. So, even if you have to file outland, it doesn't always mean you have to stay apart. It just takes the right preparation, the right explanation of intent, and complete honest file. So, this table on my screen represents all the differences between inland and outland spousal sponsorship. It's the summary of everything. That's about it. I understand this video has become a bit long, but I hope you will get all the information to make an informed decision whether to choose inland or outland sponsorship as per your situation. Spousal sponsorship is one of the most meaningful immigration categories because it's not about paperwork, it's about reunification of the families. But the process can feel overwhelming, and one small mistake can lead to months of waiting and even rejection in some cases. So be careful, file your application well organized and complete. If you want any help with regards to your sponsorship application, get it reviewed, or want me to prepare your file, I'd be happy to help. You can book a one-on-one consultation from the link provided in description or by calling our office, and I'll guide you as per your situation. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like, subscribe for more simple immigration insights, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future updates. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.